What a great day. I think Steve will be performing a flam paradiddle for us later on today, right? Okay, good. I like that. And only a drummer would know that. Live from Memphis, huh? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another incredibly wonderful American Advertising Federation Houston virtual event. As I've said in the past, we are getting so doggone good about doing these things. Every one of these that we've had has been a slam dunk home run, if that's something like that. It's it's great that you're all here, and so many people have registered today. And we know that this is a busy time for everyone. So again, thank you for being here. A reminder to send us your questions. At the bottom is the chat function, and it will give you the opportunity to send in questions and share your questions with everyone here on the webinar today. And basically, it's the Q&A function and the chat function at the bottom of the screen. We have so many different things happening here in Houston. In a pandemic kind of a year, we're still doing the American Advertising Addy Award-winning podcast, Ad Speaks Houston, always speaking with incredible people around the globe that relate to our industry. We just did a podcast this morning for our good friends at District 10 for an event that's coming up, and I'm going to promote this as well. This is Advention, which is happening, by the way, tomorrow. It's a virtual event. It is free. It's Advention, Oklahoma City. And we want you to be a part of that. If you've not registered, please go to AAF District 10 .org to register for that. A lot of great people on that on that event, and that's happening tomorrow. It's an all-day event, but well worth time spent there as well. I want you to sign up for our e-newsletter. We can't get to know you if you don't get to know us. So it's basically a two-way street here. Sign up for the e-newsletter. AAF-Houston.net is the web address. The membership benefits of AAF Houston, well, there are a whole bunch of them. And if you are not a member, if you're just viewing this for the first time and just kind of interested, this is a good day to do it because you can become a member of the American Advertising Federation Houston today. AAF-Houston.net. Kay Krennick has led this club in a ridiculously weird year, and we've got ridiculously wild results. And I'm talking about upside results. Kay is the chairman of the American Advertising Federation Houston, and take it away, Kay, from your home office. Because who doesn't these days have a home office, right?
It took me a while to get out of the dining room, but anyway.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody, and I'm going to try to keep this really short because we have two really great speakers that you want to hear from more than you want to hear from me, I'm sure. I just have a couple bits of club business. The first one being that all members of the club should have received an email this week with our electronic ballot to elect our board of directors. It'll take place July 1st. It'll come out a couple more times, and you have till mid-May to turn it in, but we really appreciate it if you take a minute when you get it in your inbox to go ahead and look at it and vote and show the support for the volunteers who are willing to lead your club, because it takes a little bit of time and a little bit of love for the industry. So show your love to them by voting. The other thing, there was a slide earlier that Valentina had up, and that is our next webinar will be Wednesday, May 19th. Go ahead and put it on your calendar. Our programs team's putting together a really great program, and the category is diversity, equality, and inclusion. And so I think it's really going to be a very timely and fascinating webinar. I want everybody to put it on their calendar now. The next thing is I want to go ahead, you know, as much as we enjoy doing these webinars, we would really prefer to be meeting in person. And we're hopeful that maybe August, September-ish, sometime in the fall, we'll start having our luncheon meetings again. But we're kind of testing the waters to see if people would be interested in trying to do a happy hour in late June. So we're going to do a quick poll, and you guys let us know what you think. Those of you who have attended, we have something called Beers with Peers, which is a really fun way to get together and network. It's after hours. We would be looking at doing it at an outdoor beer garden somewhere. We don't have it worked out yet. We want to see if you would come, if you feel comfortable coming. So take your time and go ahead and vote in the poll and let us know what you think. And that way we would know whether to plan for it or not. But we're thinking late June, outdoors, after hours get together. And while you're voting, I've got one last thing, and that's Ray already mentioned Advention, which is, those of you that don't know, it's our district conference, District 10, that includes Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and parts of Louisiana, the west side of Louisiana. And normally that conference would be in person. Of course, it's virtual again this year, and we are, it's on Thursday. The link to register for it was also on the bottom of all the emails about this webinar. So if you get a chance, you can also register for there. Or I saw Crystal also put the registration link in the chat. So this year it's free. There's some really great speakers. Try to attend. But the big news is this time next year, it will be here in Houston. We will be hosting the 10th District Conference, and it's all new news, and you're hearing it for the first time beyond our board of directors. And so we're very excited about it. So if you want to get a little taste of the types of things that'll go on, tune in on Thursday if you can, and you can look at the conference schedule. If there's just like one speaker that you really want to hear, you can maybe just log in for that. If you're interested in the business meeting, log in for that. But there's a lot of fun opportunities there. So if everybody had a chance to do our poll, we appreciate it. And do we have any results on that poll, Valentina? Can you tell? Oh, here we go. 81 to 19, 81% to 19%. Okay.
Good.
Thank you for voting. We appreciate it. And we'll start planning something, I think. So I'm done. Thank you.
I feel like we're doing a fundraiser. Call it often and donate a lot. Okay. That number again to donate is what? Whatever. Thank you, Kay. Yeah, really incredible things going on. Amazing things when you think about what's going on in the world these days. And guess who continues to keep on chugging like the little engine that could? The American Ad Federation. How about that? Today's topic is called The Art of Rebranding. Who hasn't had to think about that from time to time, huh? Our guests today come from the Memphis area. Trace Hallowell is managing partner of Tactical Magic in Memphis. Trace founded the company in 2001. A 30-year veteran of the ad business, his creative branding work has received numerous international honors, has been widely published in books, magazines, and you may have even studied some of his work when you were in school. Steve Pacheco is president and chief executive officer of the American Advertising Federation, also out of Memphis. And basically, he's the first American Ad Federation president and CEO to have held leadership roles at every level of the organization, beginning at the collegiate level, the president of the Memphis Advertising Federation, chairman of the AAF National Board of Directors, and on and on and on. And Steve continues to do phenomenal things to lead this organization forward in a time that it really needs strong leadership. So we thank you for that, Steve. Trace Hallowell will be our first speaker, and then Steve will be talking as well. But Trace, thanks for carving out time of your busy day and being here today. On with the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for those kind words. Really happy to be here talking to you. I wish I was in Texas today, but I'm there in heart. I lived in Texas for several years, went to school in Austin. Please don't hold it against me. Thrilled to talk about branding. I'm a bit of a brand nerd. Hopefully I'll have something for you today. I could probably talk for 20 days instead of 20 minutes about branding, but I'll try to keep it really brisk. I'd like to give you some perspectives, and I want to ask you to look for the challenge. I'm intentionally going to try to say something that makes you perhaps a little uncomfortable. It's like, oh, we couldn't do it that way, or I would never try that. Listen for the thing that makes you a little sweaty and uncomfortable, and ask me about it afterwards if you're truly scared of it. That's probably the thing that you need to hear today. So let me get into the art of rebranding and share my little keynote with you. Kind of three sections of sharing. I'd like to talk about principles, and the first thing is the most important thing, just the principles to apply when you got a rebranding project, whether you are rebranding for your own firm, whether you're a creative person rebranding, whether you're an account person trying to manage the ridiculously difficult process. Some principles to keep in mind that should help you stay grounded and lead to success. I'm a passionate believer that logo projects should be fun and profitable. And how come so many end up being irritating and unprofitable and frustrating? Well, they need not. Second thing I want to share with you is some examples from the wild of some rebranding that you may or may not take some lessons from. And the third thing, at the request of your leadership here, I wanted to walk you through a couple of practical case studies about how that I'm intimate with, how certain rebranding projects happened, and some of the nuts and bolts and back inner workings of how that all worked. Hopefully that sounds good to you. I'm used to looking at people and seeing heads nodding or no, I want something else, but I'll just keep on going. So first things first, principles. Remember why you're here. Keep in mind, if we're serving the brand, that will help us resist the temptation of trying to do something to win an Addy, or that'll help us resist the temptation of just meeting the whims of people in a yes or no decision-making position. To me, serving the brand has to do with everything about the branding that you do is geared toward making a connection with human beings who probably aren't very much like you. So first order of business is get to know them, get to know the brand, and serve as the bridge builder. And I'll come back to this, but this to me is foundational for doing the work right in the first place and for justifying that you've done it right in the second place. Getting the story right is about learning and discerning. Branding is and we'll talk about branding as sort of a larger picture. You know, this isn't just about new logos, although new logos are the most visible and easy to talk about bit of rebranding, but rebranding is really an opportunity to correct assumptions or to get the attention of people that have been ignoring us up until now. So get the story right means understand the brand itself deeply, define the brand truthfully in a way that's attractive to your audience, genuinely attractive to them. We may not know what they really care about. Chances are, if we have to do a rebrand, we haven't been on, so we got to talk to them and see what they actually care about. At the same time, as you're defining yourself honestly and attracting your audiences, you have to differentiate from competition. So you got to look at what they're doing. And this is really, really important because most clients have sort of a business case mindset where, you know, the Harvard Business School says, follow the case studies, do things like other people did them, and you will succeed like they did. Well, if you apply that thinking to branding, you're going to end up carbon copying somebody else and just sort of standing behind them going, me too, me too. And that really doesn't work for branding. So you have to differentiate from the competition, but you can't do that if you don't know what they're doing, what they're saying, and what they look like. Assuming you're with me so far, I'll move on to being clear about, okay, what's the goal here? Is it more important to the client? We're doing a rebrand. Is it just, you know, I'm a little upset with our cosmetics, but we're essentially in good shape and we have good relationships and we want to maintain those, but we just want to upgrade a little bit. Maybe our brand feels a little dated, or is it disruption? It's like, you know what? We took it on the chin. We had a bad rep 2 years ago and it was well deserved. and we're reinventing ourselves, and we want people to know that we want to give people permission to think about us differently going forward than they have up until now. Generally speaking, that's a sliding scale. Usually there's a little bit of continuity and a little bit of disruption. How much of each is kind of up to the situation. There's no sort of automatic right answer for this, but it's really important to talk about it. It might be even helpful to have a sheet of paper and just put disruption on one end and continuity on the other end and draw a line and say, where do we fall on this line? Because if you're going into a rebrand thinking disruption, I'm going to show how cool I am and just reinvent everything, and your client's going in thinking continuity, we just need subtle tweaks. If you don't have that conversation, then that first presentation is going to be mighty uncomfortable. And really all of this is geared toward making that first presentation really, really happy. So intentionality, getting the story right, that's a part of clarifying expectations, but there's more than that. The expectations should be, maybe your client is thinking, we want to look more Fortune 100. Maybe your designer's thinking, we want to be more hip and do some retro funky kind of stuff. That's going to be a train wreck when we start showing work. Let's talk it through. Let's be real clear about, you show me your logo and I see circus colors in Comic Sans, and I think, oh yes, obviously we need to change the circus colors in Comic Sans. But the client may be thinking, well, I actually like Comic Sans and the circus colors. I just wanted the symbol to be different. Well, let's have that conversation now, because, well, first of all, if you really want Comic Sans and circus colors, maybe I'm not the right designer for you. I don't know. But let's have that conversation up front. Ask the hard questions, ask good questions way up front so that you know what the goal is of the project. Understand that your first three impulses for fixing a brand might be right, but they might not be. As we look at rebranding projects, even some of the ones that end up being fairly subtle tweaks, we always look at a range of possibilities. And I think anytime somebody comes to me with a rebranding project, what we want to do is we want to start with the baby steps. Like, okay, let's get the proportions feeling more right. If I want to look at the symbol first and then read the words, or read the words first and then read the symbol, let's be intentional about that and do some like subtle things to improve what we've got. But let's move on from there and go farther and farther. And let's agree to go too far so that we'll know that we've covered all the bases. Generally speaking, more ideas is always good. And making yourself keep at it after you've done something that makes you happy, maybe there's something that'll make you happier down the road. Shift your perspective is good for if it's your brand or if it's your client's brand. If it's your brand, you are intimate with it from the inside out. You know your brand, you know the nuances, you know why it's great. You're frustrated that other people don't understand why it's great. It really helps you to bring in somebody from the outside with that jaded, objective perspective so that you can get a fresh look at what you're doing. Let them be not just serving your brand, but bring them on your team. Same thing, designers and agency, studio people. Let your client be part of the team. Don't just spend 20 minutes getting the rundown on the brand and nod your head and go, yeah, okay, and then spend 20 hours designing. Give a little more time to investing in their perspective. I built our whole business on the premise that the genius required for great branding is actually a balanced combination of deep insider knowledge and jaded outsider perspective. It's easy to make clients happy. It's easy for creative people to make themselves happy with the work. It's sort of exponentially harder to make both happy. But when you do that, the chances of greatness are enormous. Embrace polarization. How many times have you seen the process of logo design where it's like, okay, here are the 3 ideas. Yeah, none of these are doing it for me. What else you got? Well, we got some more. Yeah, what if we did a little of this and a little of that and a little of this? And it's like 15 meetings later, everybody's just exhausted and frustrated. And they look at the table and finally just out of not knowing what else to do is like, hey, wait a minute, what about this one? Nobody hated this one, right? Okay, this is approved. Let's move forward and just have this part of our lives done. Well, the one nobody hated, nobody loved either. Greatness does polarize, and if people do love something, then somebody's liable to not love it so much. So don't just expect unanimity from your brand team. It's okay if some people are a little grumpy about it. If you're doing the right thing, the people who are grumpiest in a month or 2 will be the biggest fans of the new brand. I've seen it again and again. You may not believe it, but it is true. Do no harm. How many times have you seen rebranding that was like a disimprovement? Don't do that. And we'll talk a little more about that later. Manage to scale. There's such a thing as a $20,000 concept that you can't really pull off well on a $2,000 budget. You're either going to lose money or you're going to be enormously frustrated, or probably both. So if you've got a $2,000 budget, do as great as you can do for that budget, not something that would have been great if only we had the money to do this and this and this right. Simplify always. I'm sure every one of you knows this, but it's not a bad habit to like take your logo. Okay, we've got it pretty much figured out. We've got it pretty much worked out. We're liking it. Start taking things away from it. Can you take that little line out and it still works? Well, maybe you leave the line out. Can you take this little dot out and it still works? Hey, maybe it's better without that dot. Do things, take things out until it really just hurts too much to where it doesn't make sense anymore, and then start putting back. This is huge. There are myths about branding and myths about logos in particular that really get in the way. And one of them is, I'll know it when I see it, which no, you won't. you really won't. The other is that, when we lay it on the table, everybody will recognize it instantly and embrace it and understand the genius of it. And that doesn't really happen either. I see more often what happens in the dynamic of evaluating new brands for yourself. And that's different from seeing them in the wild for somebody else. But seeing them for yourself, you've got huge anxiety. It's like you could get fired if you do this wrong. You've got great expectations. You got all these high emotions. Sometimes you see something and it leaves you kind of flat. But a day or 2 later, you wake up in the morning and that idea is like stuck in your head. It has grown on you over time. Let that happen. That's a good process for people who don't deal in brand development, logo design day in and day out. You're much less likely to recognize in an instant that something is great, and much more likely to have it occur to you over time, having processed it. I believe in this so much, I build it into our process. I don't let people walk away with an approved logo the first time they see it, because I don't trust it. Once you have the idea, once you've developed it, don't just stick it out there. And don't just think, okay, we got to throw a big party and everybody will love it. Think thoughtfully about how to introduce this to your friends. You know, don't insult your friends. Let them know early what's going on. And to the world at large that has been introduced, been kind of ignoring you until now, think about how to present it to them in a really interesting way. And ultimately, I'll say it again, serve the brand. I'm going to show some real world stuff. Right now, there is a trend, and I think it's by and large a pretty healthy trend towards simplifying. And this chart kind of shows some current brands that are going to flatter, less complicated treatments of their identities. Some of these we may look at and go, yeah, I'm not sure that's an improvement. I'll leave it up to you to discern which ones you think are working, which ones aren't. But it is a trend. And the fact that it's a trend makes me almost think, well, I want to do the opposite. But I do think this trend is well informed. What are the dynamics? I think the world is complicated. There's lots of noise, so simpler cuts through better. Also, I think most of us are probably experiencing brands here more than ever before. So it has to work small and simple and telegraphic in order to be strong here. Some specific examples, I'm sure you know Netflix. They've evolved to a much simpler treatment. Some people probably didn't even notice it, but it is a rather drastic change when you compare. Post-it, they've actually made their letters a little less bold, a little smaller, a little less information in the graphics, and it just works quicker and easier. It works better at small size now. This company you may be familiar with. They've gone through a long journey of simplify, simplify, simplify. And we love them for it. Most of us. This company didn't choose to simplify so much as just sort of rearrange and try to express. I don't know what their motivation was exactly. And nobody else did either. Nobody liked this. Caused a firestorm. This is arguably a disimprovement. Why would be fun to examine and talk about. There's another company out there called Coca-Cola that has evolved like over the last 130 years or more in some really interesting ways. If you look at some of these, particularly the older iterations, you realize that there are a lot of artists and a lot of hands at work, but there seems to be this consistency, this integrity over time that held together. So even though there were some sort of artistically drastically different moves, there was also a continuity, with the notable exception of somewhere around 1987, this happened. Some of you guys remember this. I remember very clearly Bill Cosby coming on TV and lying to us and saying it's new Coke and it tastes better. It's like, no, it doesn't. No, this was an enormous failure. Was it a failure because they tinkered with the identity, with the beloved logo? Or is it a failure because they tinkered with the essence of the beloved brand? Yes. There's another lesson from out there in the wild. Somebody tell me how I'm doing on time. Do I have another 10 or 5? I see a head nodding. 5 more minutes. I can do it in 5 minutes. So what's interesting in the startup and .com world is we see these iterations of identities as companies evolve and go through rounds of funding and perhaps have even more money to spend on the next level on on identity development, we see that they kind of evolve over time, and that's kind of okay. In fact, it's kind of necessary. If you're a startup, you can't really spend a whole lot of money on your identity. You just need something that helps you look legit to get through that first round of funding and then go on to the next thing. And that's actually a um, pretty valid strategy for startups, and a way for designers and agencies to keep from losing their shirts on doing, expensive projects for startups that don't pay you back. Um, some of our most successful marks have actually been pretty low budget, on the fly startup pieces, but we have to very clearly define here are the boundaries of what we'll do and how much time we can spend, and how it has to work in order for us to do it at this level. Unless, if we're going to invest, what do we get back for that investment? There has to be some return, and that could be, well, I won't get into that. I've only got 5 minutes, so let me show some case studies. I should say studies. Sorry about that. Lunar Productions. Okay, local Memphis video production company. They wanted to be known as Creative. See, it says so right there, Creative Video. But the agencies in Memphis were not giving them the time of day, partly because their identity just didn't suggest that they really got it aesthetically. So they were sort of ruled out. They wanted to disrupt perceptions. They wanted to let agencies know that, hey, we're serious about being creative. We're in it with you. We get you. So this was actually a project where the audience was us, refreshingly, as I mean, that almost never happens. So we got to do something that we thought was cool, and not just sort of vicariously cool, but actually cool for us. So our process called for coming up with 100 ideas and narrowing down to the one that we liked. And in this case, we came up with this, which I had actually overlooked because it's so freaking ugly. But the idea is, instead of just showing a moon for Lunar Productions, how could we say moon without showing it? And incorporating the lunar module Moonlander with a funky old TV set was kind of a way to do that. This is how the mark evolved and turned into a little avatar that could animate and have animation within it if you like. It also kind of dressed up nicely for business and expressed a kind of a funky vibe in the environment for showing a sense of humor and creativity for agency folks who like that kind of thing. Another example and this one I love to tell the story because it's such an example of so many of those principles that I shared before, but Temple Israel came to us and wanted a new consistent branding. And first thing I did was get out of my office and just go there. And it turns out Temple Israel is one of the oldest, most beautiful synagogues in the country, one of the largest. It's actually an architectural gem. And I'm seeing all this style and beauty and warmth and craftsmanship, artistry. And I'm feeling like, okay, well, that just doesn't feel like the rest. Tell me what's going on here. Well, the story of the mark is probably came out of the 70s. It might have been an architect who rendered it. It's sort of a odd constructivist version of burning bush. Okay, if it's a burning bush, why is it blue? Well, it's blue because the flag of Israel is blue. Okay, but burning bushes probably wouldn't be blue. What else do we see about it? There's leaves or licks of flame, some 22 of them. There are odd shapes in there. If you look at the contour, it's kind of intended to be round, but it's sort of lopsided. It's not really contoured well. It's kind of an interesting thought, but it's cold, and not quite elegant, not quite in keeping with the physical environment. And the typography is okay. It feels like cuneiform chisel, perhaps, which is perhaps appropriate. In walking around, I noticed that every single doorway at the temple had this mezuzah by the door, and there was a Hebrew character on it, which is the same character that was on the ark that held the Torah. And I asked, what is this character? It's called Shin, and it's the starting sound of the word Shaddai, or Almighty, and is a designation of sacredness. So we learned that, I'm sorry, I'm going the wrong direction. We learned that Shaddai, that Shin has various forms, and we adapted it to a very particular one and turned 4 of those Shins into this burning bush and gave it a warmer color. So now we have at once simplified their mark. We have brought it meaning with the incorporation of the Hebrew character Shin. And we've also brought meaning in there happen to be now 12 licks of flame or leaves for the 12 patriarchs of Judaism, and give them a custom typography that is in keeping with it. So they were very happy, and I was very happy. I would not have known how to do this if I hadn't gone and blundered around and started asking questions and learned things that I didn't know in preparation of developing the idea. But that to me is a sweet spot for rebranding. Here's another one, Fulmer Helmets, motorcycle helmet company. We learned that there are a lot of different riders. I've shown a few here, but there are at least 15, 20 subsets of riders, each with different aesthetics. Competition is represented by these guys, and you see a lot of ovals. And so we thought, well, maybe we just don't do an oval. We took their mark and gave them a symbol of freedom and flight and fun as a letter form monogram for their name. And it applied across packaging and promotional materials and advertising, and sort of served as the basis of a nice branding campaign. We even designed a motorcycle graphic or 2 for them. Small brand that just needed to grow up a little bit, maybe looked like they fit on Fifth Avenue. So we just, for a very modest budget, took and updated, trying to more bring out the authenticity that was already there rather than doing something brand new. And for a company called Maximum Hospitality, 4-star hotel management company. At one time, their emphasis was construction, and that was their justification for that blue eye that to them sort of represented an I-beam or a girder, which was no longer relevant, and nobody understood that story but them. So we tried to tell a story that would be more relevant to high-end 4-star hotel destinations. So if I may remind you, serve the brand, and thank you very much for your time.
Trace, thank you very much for that incredible presentation. Learned a lot, and hope you enjoyed it as well. Steve Pacheco, President and Chief Executive Officer of the American Advertising Federation, is next in our program. I also mentioned Trace is Managing Partner of Tactical Magic in Memphis. Steve, also out of Memphis. Steve, take it away, please.
Thanks, Ray, and thanks, Trace. I really enjoyed that. It's quite a body of work that you've been able to do, and really insightful guidance there. So I appreciate that. Trace is an acknowledged expert in the branding world, not just in Memphis, but around the country, and has done some incredibly powerful work that's won many awards, including American Advertising Awards from the AAF. So we're pleased to have him on here. And us 2 guys from Memphis are happy to spend some time with you guys today. AAF Houston and D10 are very, very close and near and dear to my heart. We've got so many friends down there. I go back to the old days with Ann Iverson, with Susan Siraj, and now to see Valentina stepping up and doing some great things in Houston, and to be part of the Kay and Ray show, I call it. I'm awfully excited to be here, and really do appreciate you guys including us today. AAF Houston probably is definitely held up as one of the better AAF clubs in all of the country, certainly in District 10. They hit on all the cylinders. They have a very active Ad 2 chapter. They do a ton of work around promoting the profession of advertising between the podcast and the programs like this and all the other opportunities that they offer. They're just killing it in the game and doing a really, really great job. I'll also throw a quick shout out to their Advertising Education Foundation of Houston, a really good and noble cause, and they could use your support if you're able to support that. It's part of our mission as well too. I'm going to jump in and share my screen, but I'm going to fly through this, I promise. And I want to give you a look at what I call the brand new AAF, and fundamentally, it is an all new AAF. You know, part of my charge when I came on board about 16 months ago was to sort of reinvent the organization, make us relevant for today's dynamics and modern times, and have people think well of us. And by the way, that's hard in a normal year. During a pandemic year, it's doubly hard, I assure you. But I want to take you through some of my thoughts on where the business is headed first. And I've seen that we've got a question from OJ. I hope some of this will answer that. And then I'll spend more time talking about our AAF new brand look. The first thing to really get out here is how we see 2021 shaping up. And I won't sugarcoat it or mislead you. It's still challenging times for most of the advertising business. Most of the live events are still on hold, and most of the rebounding and recovery that we want and need so badly is looking more and more like it's going to be in the second half of 2021, if not the start of 2022. I moved too fast. Sorry. The point that I want to make about the recovery is that once it's here, it will continue to rise. It's just a matter of digging ourselves out of the hole that was dug in 2020. I'm pleased to report that corporate support of AAF has been very steady and encouraging. And indeed, we're up in corporate partners 10% over a year ago. And that's very, very encouraging to me and the staff. We do realize that there are AAF clubs across the country that are under incredible pressure from membership decline. We're down almost 15% in professional members. And a bit of that is to be expected as people were either displaced, outplaced, or furloughed during 2020. A bright spot really is the AAF student chapters. They are showing steady strength, and indeed, we're actually up almost 5% in student chapter support. So I'm really encouraged to see the young people see the investment that they make in their AAF membership pay some dividends. For 2021, we all went into the new year thinking that a new calendar equaled a new start and all things were going to be bright and sunshiny and rosy and rainbows. But indeed, that hopeful optimism gave way to the harsh reality that we still have some work to do. And I just want to encourage you all, we're doing great here. We're doing the best we can with what we have. We don't have a playbook or any guidance or any real directional input on how to handle not only a global pandemic, but also all the civil unrest and social injustice that we saw come through the world last year. And not to mention the economic side of things too. So my hopeful advice to you is that you take the long view and that this too shall pass, and don't get too micro-focused on the future. We're thinking about the next year ahead. So for 2021, I have these 6 predictions. I've highlighted the brands. Brands will add more humanity to their advertising. We're seeing that already. And I think if you watched the Super Bowl, you saw that firsthand. An awful lot of humanity returned to the messaging for advertising. And I think that's a good thing. Part of that is driven by purpose-driven and mission-focused statements from those brands that want to be relevant in today's high demand marketplace. Brands are actively embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion like never before. Coming out of 2020, more people have made sound commitments to add diversity, equity, and inclusion statements to their mission statements and purposes. And we're certainly in a great position to help them with that. Digital transformation is accelerating at a pace unlike the last 10 years. And I think you'll see that continue. If you were a retailer and didn't have an e-commerce platform in 2020, chances are you've boarded up your business and folded the tents, because that is not a nice to have, but now a mandatory. Performance marketing and in-house marketing will move to prime time and continue to emerge as people look for every available marginal difference to continue their marketing and advertising messaging platforms through efficient means, which means more pressure on the work itself. As for the AAF, here's our commitments. We're going to continue to build value in your AAF club membership at every turn and every opportunity. And we hope that you do see the value in programs like these that are open to not just the AAF Houston chapter, but across the country. And so you'll see more and more of these things as we unfold into 2021. We've spent the downtime improving our infrastructure and internal systems on how we communicate with the AAF clubs and across our grassroots network. That's going to serve us well when things do return. And those investments are going to have huge dividends to make things even more efficient for us. We're going to continue to expand the diversity, equity, and inclusion work we do through AAF's Mosaic Center. And next week is our Mosaic 10 Awards. We hope you'll tune in for that. Quick push to that. Also, D10 does such an incredible job in their own Mosaic Awards and just recently held theirs to great support from the community. So we appreciate that too. And then as far as investments, we'll continue to enhance those programs and platforms that allow us to develop the next generation of advertising leaders. I think our young people are struggling. This is the third straight semester where college students have been in lockdown mode. We want to encourage them and be there for them in every way that we can. So we've doubled down on our support for the college students. And that's to pay off one of our statements, which is to be the talent pipeline for the entire ecosystem that's advertising, marketing, media, entertainment, and make sure that we're there for these young people who need us. And our tagline and our mantra and our motto remains to be the unifying voice for advertising, give every one of our members a voice and an opportunity to be heard on important issues that matter across the country. Really, really excited about talking about students again. You know, my first introduction to AAF was through the National Student Ad Competition. And back in the client was Maxwell House Coffee. And I blame that for my severe caffeine addiction to this day, many, many years later. This year, you fast forward and it's not Maxwell House, folks. We've got Tinder as our 2021 NSAC sponsor. And I can't tell you how much fun the students are having working on this. I also can't tell you how much explaining we've had to do to the educators and the teachers and the professors about what Tinder is. But nonetheless, we're having a blast with it. The case study and the brief was really to combine the fact that they're a powerful connection app. They're also a brand unto themselves. They also feature technology and innovation. At some point, they want to monetize and make it an advertising platform. So the students have a lot to work with and a lot to think about. And after all, the students are their basic demo of 18 to 24-year-old people. And so they're getting great insights on this right now. We're at the district competition level right now. We'll wrap that up in late May, and then the national champion. This is our own version of March Madness. We go down to bracketology. And then as we enter the first week of June, we'll name a national champion for the National Student Ad Competition. We've got 97, 98 colleges and universities competing, and we couldn't be more excited about what the final work will look like. We are looking for a 2022 NSAC partner, and if you've got a suitable brand that might work for this high-level competition for our college students, let us know and we'll chase that down. I always like to end on good news, and the good news here is that we're taking care of our staff. They're all healthy. About half of us are fully vaccinated by now. We're looking at trying to get back into the office in late summer or early fall. The weird thing is that through the lockdown and through working remotely, the AF staff has actually collaborated better than ever before. And we're having, you know, daily and weekly check-in calls. We're keeping up with each other. We're checking on everybody's health and wellness. And I feel really good about how much work we've been able to do during the lockdown. And I'm really, really proud of the staff. Also proud of the outstanding support we get from our volunteers, our club presidents, the board chair, vice chair, our sponsors, our supporters. Everybody has rallied around the AAF because it's an organization they feel deeply about and they want to see us succeed. So can't tell you how grateful I am for all their support. Back in January, we launched a new brand identity, which I'm going to spend a moment on. And then also with that, a new AAF.org website was launched. It was one of my first things to do on my to-do list when I joined, and it took me a lot longer to do it than I thought it would, but we got it done in January and we started the new year with a new look. That work was done by Odin & Associates, which is a Memphis-based communications and design agency. They, through the years, have done a ton of brand work for my former employer, FedEx. And you know of the FedEx brand and how powerful it is and how the color breaks for the different brand operating companies are set up. Odin is a lot of the work behind that and has done a ton of work in this area. So we gave them the brief to modernize this old logo. and if you think about it, this is 26 years. It's older than some of the people on this call. And it's also, it's incredibly dated. You know, the red and the blue, the typeface, everything about this screams your grandfather's organization, right? So we felt like it was high time that we take this and evolve it into 2021. So what we came back with is this, and I couldn't be happier and prouder of the new bold look for American Advertising Federation. Part of it is to de-emphasize. We've got two dirty words in our name. Advertising is a bit limiting, and federation again sounds like your grandfather's organization. So we really sort of de-emphasize those, and by moving to lowercase and highlighting the middle A, we're allowing advertising to be whatever you define it or construe it as. You know, the lines are blurring between what is true advertising, marketing, media, experiential, you name it. So we wanted to put a little more emphasis on that and let people decide what the A means for them. And this is the new look. This is what it looks like at a club lockup. This is my hometown club and Trace's hometown club, AAF Memphis. So the descriptor carries a little bit more weight down at the bottom right of the logo. This is what a college chapter lockup would look like. And our dear friend Steve Hall at University of Illinois has already deployed this and put it into rotation. And then for our affiliate clubs and our subchapters right in your own home state there in Texas, Add to Austin has embraced this and is using this logo mark. So it works out really well for a variety of applications and opportunities. The expectations that we had going into this, and part of the brief was that we wanted the clubs and the chapters to embrace the new brand and adopt its usage. The last time we rolled out the new logo 24 years ago, you know, we had modest acceptance, and eventually we wore people down and they started to use it. We wanted people to genuinely warm up to this and increasingly take it on and do it really quickly. And it took to task really well. We've got over 65% of the clubs across the country have already adopted it. We also thought it would help our non-branded clubs and chapters change over to AAF branding. We've had great success there. We wanted it to be confirmation that the AAF is a modern progressive organization, and it had to work well in a variety of new platforms. The old logo just didn't hold up to some of the more demanding needs. And Trace brought up the importance of having mobile and having your brand marks look so good there. For us, this was optimized for mobile usage. We also did a variety of color studies, which I'll show you an example of. And we also made sure that it would work at an experiential level in big, bold colors and opportunities. So a lot of research, a lot of tests, a lot of run up to this. It took us almost 9 months during 2019 to develop this, and then we rolled it out in January of 2021. The usage examples that you see here are the logo pack and stationery kit that also, again, clean, contemporary, crisp, and very, very much more modern than what the old look was. Here's our merch store and the opportunities that we have to brand some of the items that we promote and that a lot of our club chapters accept. And then wearables and apparel, another category for us that's starting to get some traction as well. So that's the new look. We feel really, really great about it, and we're excited about what it means for the next year to come as people continue to. There we go. Thank you for your support, and I'll get off the screen there. It helps us understand how well the brand travels and carries across the country. No two AAF clubs are the same. Indeed, they all operate in different markets and they have different needs for those markets. For us, we just felt like the united and unified brand was really, really important to let people see that this AAF equals that AAF, and that I feel comfortable and part of the family, no matter where I may travel to or where I may be in any given time across the country. So that's a quick run through of my updates on the AAF and the advertising industry as a whole, and then the quick look at the branding to answer that call too. And I'll turn it back over to the Kay and Ray show, and happy to answer any questions or help you with anything you might need.
Thanks much, Steve. We appreciate that. It looks great. And we have something to show you and everybody on this webinar right now. Valentina, go right ahead. Well, how about that? Was that quick enough? How about that, huh? Guys, thank you, Steve, and thank you to Trace as well. Do we still have some time for some questions here?
I think
Valentina, what do you think?
we have a few more minutes and there's a couple of questions in the chat. So if you guys are willing to stick around, there's a question for Trace. What's a good sign that it's time to do a rebrand? You're muted, you're muted.
still muted, Trace.
We're missing your answer.
All right.
There you are.
I'm double unmuted now. Thank you. So, what's a good sign when people start saying, yeah, your logo needs a makeover, or the aesthetic signs seem obvious to us. The things that I think speak to a need to rebrand is if you're just not getting traction with what you've been doing. Like if you perceive that your brand is better, but some guy across town is getting all the business, even though they charge too much and their product is inferior. What's going on there? Well, people are perceiving it as preferable for some reason. So the preferences are not aligned the way you think they ought to be. So if you're right, then that calls for rebranding, because that's what's going to inform those preferences.
Thank you. We have another one. What branding or rebranding project that you worked on was the hardest to get perfect?
Yeah, well, they're all hard and they're all fun. I think the hardest one was a company, a service organization called Senior Services. It was started in 1961 here in Memphis, and they started doing things for senior citizens. But over the years, they were so good at managing and serving that they started taking on things like special needs, foster care, and services for the blind and other things. And they'd gotten to the point where they're having to spend a good chunk of their day explaining how, no, the foster care isn't for service seniors, because their name is Senior Services. They'd gone through a couple of consultants and agencies trying to rebrand, and just ended in failure, because there's so much love in the organization for the organization. The people in it are so tied to it and so emotional about it that they just couldn't let go of the name Senior Services. Or maybe they just didn't have a good alternative. But it took us probably 18 months from start of brand strategy, working through the name, working through the brand identity, doing the rollout, because they needed a lot of therapy. They needed to get to a place where they were okay with, yes, you can still love the organization if the name changes, and yes, here's a good name, and here's a good story for you to tell going forward. It just took a lot of patience to get everybody to catch up with where the executive director knew they needed to go.
Thank you, Trace. And we'll have
Welcome.
one last question, and we'll close it with this one. Steve, if you can chime in as well. We have a question in the chat. QJ is asking, a perhaps old but still important question. How do you guys see the future of advertising, or the future of branding, at least in the next 5 or 10 years from where you're standing right now?
Oh,
You want to go for that, Steve?
Sure, I'll jump in. I think two points. I tried to make it in the first part of my presentation, is that you're going to see a real return to a sense of humanity and people doing purpose-filled messaging across the board. They're going to have the company mean more than just products, goods, or services. And I think consumers demand more of the brands that they work with and invest in these days, more so than ever. So I really look for brands and advertisers to step up and increasingly show that in their messaging mix in some powerful ways. And I think that's good for creativity. The second part of that answer is that you're going to see more personalization across the board and more sub-target advertising messaging meant for very, very specific audiences, maybe some micro-targeting where you can. The ability to personalize messages is something you're already seeing, and I think you'll start to see that at scale over the next 5 years too.
But that essential formula of respect me and give me something has always been true, and it's even more critical now. It's like, because I can pull away so much faster than I ever could before, and I could go to other channels and other media so much faster. So it's, give me something and be relevant to me.
Thank you so much, Trace. Thank you for all of you guys that are still hanging in here with us. I know we ran a little bit over, but I think it's worth it for this great conversation we're having. Kate, do you have anything else to add before I shoot it off to Ray so we can close it out?
Well, you took care of the thank yous to both of these fine gentlemen, and I appreciate that. I just wanted to say that this officially is the launch of the AAF Houston new brand, and our website change went live during the webinar. So if you want to check that out, and we also you'll be seeing our social media and everything as we move to the new the new brand. So AAF Houston is on board, and we're excited about it. So thanks.
And you can see we're very good at multitasking here in Houston as well. That's the key thing.
Oh yeah, shout out to Brian Bearden and the team at Upstream Marketing who got the website, went live at 12:30 while we were online. So
they didn't even take lunch. They did
they
the
just
website.
worked right through.
That's the
right.
kind of people we have here in Houston. Thanks to Trace Hallowell, Managing Partner at Tactical Magic Memphis. Thanks to Steve Pacheco, President, Chief Executive Officer of the American Advertising Federation. Don't go anywhere. I still see we have a whole bunch of folks here. Tomorrow, April 22nd, is Advention, District 10. It is free. It's a virtual event. Go there now and register for that event. Advention tomorrow. And during lunch tomorrow, if you want to, jump off to Memphis and see the role brand should play in the local community. They have a webinar going on tomorrow at 12 noon. So you eat your lunch there and you get two benefits. And this is with a gentleman from PepsiCo as well. So you can do both of those things, as we all are good at very multitasking. Don't forget about the podcast, AdSpeaks Houston. Subscribe. The District 10 podcast, Attention. We just did a podcast today promoting the event tomorrow. Sign up for the Houston e-newsletter. That's always great. Go check out the new website right after this. Don't do another thing. Just go there and see what it's all about. And while you're there, if you're not a member, become a member, aaf-houston.net. Remember, on Wednesday, May 19th, Diversity and Inclusion is our next webinar for you from Houston with love. Thank you for being here today. Have a great week. Stay safe, stay hopeful, and let's do it. Thanks for watching.